And we know that there are many kinds of partnerships within the family institutions. We have monogamy, where someone is married to only one person at one time, or when somebody is divorced or separated from the spouse, the person may remarry, but that is still a monogamy. And we also have polygamy, or somebody has a deceased spouse and remarry. And also, this is also another form of monogamy, because the person is married to one spouse at one particular time point. And another kind of partnership, we call that the polygamy, where a person is married to one or more spouses at one time point. A person is allowed to be married to more than one person at one particular time point. And we also have polygyny, a man being married to more than one woman at one time point. So polygyny is one kind of polygamy, and polyandry is a second kind of polygamy. When we talk about polyandry, a woman is married to more than one man at the same time. And this can happen in matriarchal society, where women are more superior than men in those societies. Yes, there are a few societies in certain countries around the world that are matriarchal. The power is transferred from grandmothers to mothers to daughters. This is what we mean by matriarchal society. And we often see polygyny partnerships in patriarchal society, where men have more power and the lineage or the power in that kin group is transferred from grandfather to father to son. And we also have another kind of partnership. We call that bigamy, where somebody can be married to another person while they are still being married to their existing spouse. And all these kinds of partnerships can affect the individual or the children growing up in these different kinds of household in different ways. In a polygyny partnership, the children may have more than one mothers, but only one biological mom. This is how growing up in a polygyny partnership affects the kids. The kids may have to show respect to more than one moms, even though the kids may only have one biological mom. The same with someone growing up in polyandry partnerships. The kid may have more than one fathers, even though the kid only has one biological father. The kid may have to call more than one man in that family father or something else that resembles a father figure. This is how growing up in a polyandry partnerships affect the children. And in a bigamy partnership, the kids may have multiple fathers and mothers. And the kid may have to refer to other men and women in that household in honorifics that resemble fatherhood or motherhood figures. This is how growing up in bigamy partnerships affects the children. And most of us grow up in monogamy partnership. We only have one mother and one father. And this is how monogamy partnerships affects us. So, family institutions can affect individuals through the kind of partnerships. And family institution can also affect individuals through the type of living arrangements in terms of residency or the lines of descent. In bilateral descent, we consider paternal and maternal ancestors as part of one's family. We recognize both the father's and the mother's lineage. So the children growing up in families characterized by bilateral descent have that mindset growing up from their childhood years to their adulthood years. They consider the father's side of the family and the mother's side of the family as their relatives, as their kinfolk. And the notion of kinship can also affect individuals in terms of traceable ancestry through blood testing, DNA testing, or through marriage and adoption. In some cultures, adopted children are considered quote-unquote second-class children because they are not related by blood. And they may have lesser inheritance or they don't qualify for any inheritance at all. Parents leave them out of their will. This is how kinship affects individuals. Maybe in families that emphasize kinship or relations by blood, they only leave their inheritance to their biological kids. And in unilateral descent, we trace the kinship only through one parent, one side of the parent. And one kind of unilateral descent would be patrilineal descent, where we only trace the kinship through the father's lineage. In countries like China and India, they do that because these are patriarchal societies. So they only follow the father's lineage. So this is how growing up in patrilineal descent affects individuals. They growing up with the awareness that their family members only recognize the father's side of the family as their relatives. And a second kind of unilateral descent, we call that the matrilineal descent. In this case, we trace only the mother's lineage. In tribes like the Crow and Cherokee tribes, these are matriarchal society. So maybe individuals growing up in these tribal groups, they have the mindset that they only recognize the mother's side of the family. So this is how the lines of descent affects and individuals, they mainly affects their mindset and awareness of which lineage, whether it's the father's lineage or the mom's lineage or both, that they have to recognize as their relatives. And then bilineal lineage, it follows either the father's or the mother's line, depending on the situation. And in these kind of lines of descent, maybe through a big natural disasters, and God forbid, the whole father's line of family are lost in this big fire or natural disasters, and they cannot be traced. And because of that, people in that group can only trace the mother's lineage. They have no choice, and vice versa. And some cultures have patrilocal residence. Other cultures have matrilocal residence. So, in patriarchal societies, like in China and India, the brides marry into the groom's family. This is what we mean by patrilocal residence. So, this is how the residency affects the brides to be. They have to marry and move into the groom's family. And in matrilocal residence, in cultures that practice matrilocal residence, the groom marries into the bride's family. So this is how the residencies affect the groom. He has to move and marry into the bride's family because women are in charge in matriarchal societies. So the family institution can also affect people's life by the kinds of family life. We have different kinds of family life. We have the nuclear family, where there's only the married couples and the kids, like the nucleus of an organism. And the nucleus often serves as the core of the organism. So in a nuclear family, the married couples and the kids serve as the core of that family unit. And we also have single parent family. We also have extended family or cohabitation partnerships. We also have same-sex couples or same-sex unions. And some people decide to stay single for the rest of their life. They are never married. And these different types of family life can affect the person. Growing up in a nuclear family is just our parents, the mom and the dad and the kids. So we are often exposed to a relatively small family compared to growing up in extended families, where in addition to married couples and children, or we also have grandparents. And in some extended families, there may be more than one nuclear families. In those extended families, there may be more than one married couples and their kids living together in this big extended family. And this can affect the kids in different ways. And oftentimes, growing up in extended family, it's easy for the adult to get help from other relatives within that extended family, when someone is sick or someone has to work to take care of kids or to help with other chores. So this is how growing up in extended family affects the individuals. And in some instances, growing up in extended family can enable the person to read the minds or to figure out the personality types of their relatives or their siblings better, because they grew up with so many people. And because of that, sometimes growing up in extended family enables a person to read the other person better compared to growing up in nuclear family. So this is how the type of family life affects the person. And growing up in a single parent family also affects the individuals and the parents. The single parent, whether it's single mom or single dad, may be spread thin. The person has to work. The person has to take care of kids. The person has to do all kinds of chores, especially when kids were too young to help out. And the parent may be exhausted. Being the single parent. And the kid may not have as much resources as the other kids who grew up in nuclear family with both parents, or kids who grew up in extended family, or who grew up in cohabitation partnerships, or who grew up with same-sex parents. Kids growing up in these other family types may have more resources because both parents, if they both work, they may be able to pool resources. Or even if just one parent work is in this kind of family, the other parents or both parents can help out in different kinds of household chores and other work in the house. And growing up with cohabitated parents, parents who live together but are not married, can affect the kids or affect the parents themselves. In certain cultures, cohabitation is being frowned upon. In Muslim cultures, countries, in some Asian and Latin American cultures, cohabitated couples are being stigmatized or ostracized in that society. This is how the type of family life affects the individuals. And in other societies like America or Europe, growing up in cohabitation families is very similar to growing up in nuclear family and same-sex couples family. Parents and kids in these families are not discriminated at all. Parents can still enroll their kids in school. And kids will not be ostracized or stigmatized in school. Kids will not be bullied in school, even if they grew up in cohabitation household in the US and in Europe. The same with growing up with same-sex couples. The couples themselves and the kids may face discrimination in some countries, but not others. And it's the same, like the case of cohabitation. The same-sex couples in some countries may not be able to register their kids in school or to get their kids vaccinated or to try to apply for certain healthcare services for their kids or for their partners in some cultures. But in other cultures, growing up as same-sex couples or growing up with same-sex parents is not very different from growing up in nuclear family, growing up in extended family, or growing up in cohabitation household. And staying single can also affect the person. People who stay single, who never get married, when they are young, maybe they can do things on their own. And when they hit old age, when they have certain illnesses or disabilities, they may have to move closer to one of their siblings or a close relative or a close friend, because they know, they are aware that they may need help from these people as they get old, because they don't have a spouse to help them. They don't have kids to help them out. So these are how the kinds of family life can affect a person. So the family institutions also affect the individual in this sense through the kind of family life.